I feel like pimp culture in the Bay Area is definitely that. It's definitely real pimp on the blade, on the whole stroll, pimp culture. But it's also the all on a bitch mentality. When we was in high school, it was AOB, which means all on a bitch. So when it comes down to making your money off the labor of a woman, and also when you date a woman, to do anything for her is deemed as tricking.
Right.
And they actually prefer it in the reverse. It's like, can you buy these J's for me?
Right.
Can you do this for me? It's all on a bitch.
P for the power, I information, M for the monetary, P the plantation, what's pimpin'?
Today we're here with Zen St. Charles, an advocate for sex trafficking survivors, and Darling Tierra, host of the podcast Death to F-Boys and Big Mouth Woman. We want to wrap up this series by highlighting their crucial community work to protect Black women and girls. Heads up, this podcast uses explicit language and addresses sexual themes.
We're going to start off with the first question. So just, your real definition, what's pimping? Like, what's pimping to y'all? How would you define it? And feel free, whoever wants to go first. Don't act shy. You ain't shy.
Okay. All right. She says, let the CSEC abolitionist answer it. So just so you know, CSEC stands for Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children. We don't turn away women, but we specifically work with young people that are being trafficked, like 18 and under. Okay. But we definitely do also still, like, if women need services, absolutely. My definition of pimping, because I don't like the cool definition. I'm back to old school. So my definition would be somebody that is making a living off of the labor, specifically sexual labor, of someone else. Yeah. Someone specifically that they're claiming to be responsible for or thinking they have ownership over in some capacity. So that would be my definition.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to, jump in terms of like how it lives in the Bay Area. And I feel like pimp culture in the Bay Area is definitely that. It's definitely real pimp on the blade, on the whole stroll, pimp culture. But it's also the all on a bitch mentality. When we was in high school, it was AOB, which means all on a bitch. So when it comes down to making your money off the labor of a woman, and also when you date a woman, to do anything for her is deemed as tricking.
Right.
And they actually prefer it in the reverse. It's like, can you buy these J's for me?
Right.
Can you do this for me? It's all on a bitch. And so that is just like a component of pimp culture and how it exists in the Bay, at least as I was, growing up here.
I love the consistency of the conversation. We have had this conversation about 3 different times and 3 different iterations, different groups of people. One thing that continues to come up is AOB.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every single time. And it really resonates, and it speaks on how ubiquitous the culture is here. Like, it's just part of our living, right? It's just the reality. So as you're coming of age and you're ready to date, you better be versed in what AOB is because you're going to be part of it one way or the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's, we talk about these different categories, and as somebody that works specifically with children that are exploited, like how have terms changed maybe over time? Because, this is also a community and a region that was heavily influenced like by the MAC and like a lot of glorification of this type of mentality. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
So I feel like referring to it as human trafficking is a newer concept, but human trafficking has been a term for a long time. It just typically has been attributed more to like labor, like people that are being trafficked for labor work, like, crops and things of that sort. I would say... Sorry, I'm blanking on.
No, it's really true because when you talk about labor too, you're talking like, I'm thinking like farm workers and stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay, right. So like people that are like getting exploited because maybe they don't have their papers or something, and then people take
or domestic work.
Oh,
domestic work, right?
So back to what you were saying about people saying like, well, girls choose it, and so the difference between like the sex work component of it and the human trafficking component. So I would say the biggest distinction that makes them different is consent. So if you are in the sex work industry, you're consenting to working in it. Like it's your job. You're choosing it. If you're being trafficked, you're absolutely not consenting. You're being exploited. You've been a lot of times kidnapped, coerced in, things of that capacity. So you're not consenting. Somebody is exploiting you. Somebody is benefiting from your labor. It is a form of
consent. I know it sounds rudimentary, but some people don't.
Mostly men Most people don't understand it. There are senators who don't understand consent.
Sorry. We was too
No,
soon.
go ahead.
Supreme Court justices that don't understand consent.
Yes. So
Somebody asked her to explain consent in case she was off mic a little bit.
Okay, so first, let's just start with the fact that children cannot consent to being. Let's just start there. So there's no such thing as a child consenting to being sold for sex or doing any type of sex work. Like it's illegal.
So they say girls choose this. That's an oxymoron.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The other part of that, though, is the idea that as soon as you turn 18, it's a choice. But what we don't talk about is, so yes, at 18, you can consent and you can choose to do it for work. But a lot of times the choice has already been taken away.
Right.
Somebody has already made money off of exploiting you sexually. Somebody has already maybe raped you, molested you, taken advantage of you in some capacity sexually that has taken away the value of it. Right. So for you to act like when she turns 18, she woke up on her birthday and was like, yeah, I'm ready to be in sex work. Right. Another part of it is the inequity around it, where it's this concept that sex work is something that is like an overarching definition, when really it's a definition that has really been coined by white women.
Wow.
Absolutely. So so the term.
Okay.
So even the idea of like choosing to be in sex work, of even like the different dimensions of it. So if we're talking about like somebody that's like got an OnlyFans account or is in like FinDom, which is financial domination, where it's like you get to put your necks on your foot on people's necks and be like, give me money. Right. Or even like phone sex operator, making your own sex videos. These are all, stripping. These all fit in the category of sex work, but a lot of times the people that have access to them, they don't look like us. Right. So when we're really talking about the term prostitution, is typically how they refer to Black and brown girls and women, and even young boys and men that are being or that are in it, even when they're choosing to do it. Right. We just don't talk about it a lot. Like it has become this like glamorized idea. And so when you see these people out here on the picket lines, or that are like doing podcasts about it, or that are advocating for it online, a lot of them are people that have a lot more voice and agency. They're in positions to really choose this, and a lot of them, did maybe get to make the choice later on in life, versus it being something that was some form of exploitation that has now turned into an occupation that they feel like is the thing that maybe they are the best at, or, there's a lot of levels to it. Like, why people continue to do it even after they're no longer being exploited, or even after they're no longer being taken advantage of. So the whole concept of sex work even being a thing and trying to act like it's so contrast or so far away from the idea of being trafficked, there is really a very thin, muddled line, honestly.
Wow. And so a follow-up question I have for you is like, so specifically when it comes to how Black women and girls are disproportionately affected by this culture, I think I want to know, for somebody looking in it, like they might use a racist analogy or analysis rather, where they're like, oh, well, like a lot of Black girls are in this because, maybe they're fast, or they might use the racist tropes, to basically justify that. Can you talk a little, and both of you, like a little bit about why there are disproportionate numbers? Because I've looked it up, disproportionate numbers of Black women and girls that are in this lifestyle or life.
So one of the main things I was told when I first got into the work is that sex trafficking is a symptom of other inequity that exists, or inequality that exists. So you see it a lot in communities where, first of all, the population, like main cities, because of course they're hubs and people can easily get in and out of them, but also because they're just a lot of people, they're more expensive in those places to live. And so you have a lot more people that are suffering and trying to survive in those areas. And so it just makes a great place for exploitation, because people are, I guess the word that I would say is like, you're more at risk. A lot of young people come into getting sex trafficked through the foster care systems. Also, it happens a lot of times. One of the biggest issues we have with like trying to get young people out and get them help is housing. First of all, we just don't have enough housing resources in general.
Somewhere for me to stay. He got my food. He gave me clothes. He gave me an allowance.
Right.
And the opposite that I have offered to me is none of that, or very little of that. then you're offering me room and board,
Right.
a service and protection.
Or that your house is not a safe place.
Yeah. Right.
You know, like a lot of times there's some type of sexual deviation taking place in the household already, whether it's somebody taking advantage of you sexually or somebody making money off of you sexually. Yeah. And so when you think of that and it's like, we're like, oh, we found this girl out here. How are we going to get her home? She don't want to go home.
Right.
Home is the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, where are we going to, if we don't have housing for her, what can you do? Well, that's how they end up back in the hands of a pimp or an exploiter or some, even if it's like a system of them just looking out for each other, like that's how they end up back there, because how are they going to feed themselves? How are they going to put a roof over their head?
I want to go back to the concept of fast, because trafficking girls is a worldwide business. It's bigger than the drug trade. We talk about the drug trade all the time, but the sex trade is bigger than the drug trade. The Oakland to Vegas sex trade and the Atlanta sex trade are two of the biggest sex trades in the U.S. But when you have girls that are caught fast in a family for wanting to be affectionate and sit on their uncle's lap, they're going to tell you to move and stop being fast. They're not going to tell the uncle stop sexualizing the girls in the family.
Right.
So they already flipped it from the gate that what you are doing naturally, or, you know, as a child that wants affection, or even as a girl that's like learning sexuality is wrong. So, you know, there's people that have studies on like the kick out expulsion rate of Black girls, because they're already seen as hard, as tough, as whatever from the gate.
Right.
So, you know, when I see a young girl that's being exploited, I'm like, she's making a choice to be a hoe. Because she also made the choice to be fast when she was 8 before she even knew what her vagina could do. So it's just like a build of the rape culture and the pimp culture that already exists in a lot of our households. And so when we first get propositioned by a pimp, the proposition is not far-fetched outside of like our internal concept of how we already show up in the world. So fast is fake. Being fast is fake, and it's something that we should not practice. If our girls are stepping out of line because they're expressing sexuality overtly, that is outside of the realm of what's normal or what's safe, then we're supposed to pull them in, not push them out and call them fast.
We don't need any more terms.
And it sounds like a lot of like a correlation between the disproportionate levels of sexual violence that young Black girls are experiencing, and then, you know, the pimp is there to like bring them into this other aspect that isn't going to help them, you know? So I see a lot of connections there.
Will you all talk a little bit about what like the impacts are of, you know, y'all talking about young women, Black girls getting trafficked 18 and under. There's 2 questions. One is like, what's the information around once someone decides, hey, actually maybe I don't want to be a part of this life, you know, maybe they have that moment. How easy or challenging is it? What do they have to do? How many folks have to be involved? What type of resources does it take just for one girl to get out?
That is a good question.
So let me start with the fact that statistically, I'm not going to just say girls, people typically go back about 6 to 8 times before you can actually like get it. And that's like regardless of age. That's typically the spectrum of how many times you'll, and it's right. Like when I think about young women that I've worked with, young girls that I've worked with, that's about right. And the thing is, it's a little hard depending on how old they are too.
Right.
Because there starts to be this idea around the whole like fastness where it's like you're choosing this. So when they're younger, they're treated more like a victim. But when they start hitting about, I would say probably about 15, 16 is when it starts to get really hard, because then there starts to be this like, you know, in some states, that's the age of consent.
That's right.
So it's like you're consenting to this, so you're choosing this. They also start thinking about dating. A lot of conversations I've had is who's going to love me now, you know?
Right.
So it's like I might as well go back to my pimp, or I might as well go back to this life, because what guy, when I tell them this, is going to date me, you know?
That's a valid fear to have.
So
It also sounds like adultification. I don't know if y'all heard of that term, adultification, where also like Black girls are often seen as older, or they're treated like they're older people instead of treated with the tenderness and the nurturing and the care that they actually need.
Especially Black and brown girls. We get sexualized so much. We get, even the idea of like how much pain doctors think Black women can take. Yeah. Think of that in reference to a 15 or 16-year-old girl who really is a girl, but somebody's looking at her like a grown woman because she's Black.
Right.
And somebody's thinking, oh, she can take more mistreatment than this frail white girl. You know, it is really a concept that's very ingrained in our society. People don't even realize the biases that they have when they see girls that look a certain way. The sexualization and the like adultification, which you said.
And not just, even though this is a whole issue of white supremacy, it's more rampant in our community. You know, I've been called fast by grandmothers and aunties and all of that, or, being warned off of being fast by my folks long before.
What did I do?
Right. I was dancing, or I was standing, or breathing, breathing too haughtily. I don't know, but the fact that whole notion is really ingrained in our community is part of our culture. Mm-hmm. And speaking of culture, I just kind of wanted to talk about the lyrics. I wonder the music, right? Mm-hmm. When particularly in Oakland and in the Bay, it is so part of our culture. Do you find that it's a challenge to change the paradigm, to shift the way that young women are thinking, or young people are thinking about being exploited, when it's like, run these gray girls 2 at a time, no discretion, act like I don't know my profession. Like, this is all part of the lyrics. This is part of the music we dance to. This is, this is part of our lifestyle. And it's not deemed negative in our lifestyle. It's actually celebrated. Do you find that it's a challenge to divorce that mind state from the work?
Yes. That is a short answer. Hip hop, the culture of hip hop is so big. It's so grand. It's so influential. It's back in the days, there was some denying its influence, but it's so undeniably influential, and it embeds so much of the goodness of our culture into it that it's hard for young people to sift out. This shit is us. Like, it's fly, it feel good, it represents us, but it's hard for them to filter what's poisoning about it. And I have been in so many different classes of people, different groups of people, and if Too Short, what's my favorite word, bitch drops, the pause before everybody in unison says bitch, the collectiveness of it.
Like a church.
And it's like, even myself, like, I have to teach myself to not participate, because I'll just fall right in,
The mayor just did a picture with Too Short.
I don't even want to talk about.
Let it out, Ryan. Let it out.
Was it the verses with E40 and Too Short?
Yeah, talk about
I jumped on that Clubhouse because the Bay was celebrating it, and I was like, but Todd. Hello.
Todd. We go by first name. That is
Todd is the godfather. Well, one of the godfathers, modern day, because we talk about the Mac, but modern day, at least when we grew up.
Right.
Godfather of pimp culture in the Bay. And, I know people who have been on sets with him, and they're like, he calls women by bitch like it's their first name, and they respond. And I could tell when the men are telling me that they're saying it like they're kind of disgusted, but on the under, they're kind of impressed.
Right.
And that
Speak on that shit.
me.
Speak on that shit.
That really disturbs me. So it's just that pimp culture in the Bay, like, with men who I admire, who I actually feel would like stand for me or protect me in the wrong situation, that when we start talking about their idols, that was the same thing with R. Kelly, same thing with Cosby. When we start talking about their idols, they really choose up. Yeah. And it's like, is it pimp culture? They choose up. We don't be choosing
Who hoeing though?
Okay, go ahead. They be like, I love you, until you start talking about my boy.
Yeah, right.
So what made you start the Death to Fuck Boys? then?
I kept just noticing like the woes that my female friends was falling into in terms of dating. I remember the woes that I fell into, you know, before I got married. And I remember thinking that a fuckboy, like, you know, fuckboys is the current day term. We got player, we got dog, we got ladies man, we got all these other terms for fuckboy depending on the generation. But I remember thinking that a fuckboy looked a very specific way, acted a certain way. And I was like, oh, it's multiple types of these niggas.
You had it down to the T.
And so I wanted to classify types of behavior so women would know, like, there's blue collar fuckboys. There's tech fuckboys.
Yeah.
There's fuckboys in the mask in the church. There's RBG fuckboys who use big words and talk about melanin stem and hidden figures and shit.
Boys, yeah.
There's just so many types, and I remember like being kind of like, I would say 16 to 21, 20, where I had my run in with an RBG fuckboy. I had my run in with church fuckboys. I had my run-in and I went to jail over a hood figure fuckboy. Wow. And so I got stories because people would be like, you've been married forever. How do you know this? And I'm like, first of all, I got mamas. I got a stepfather. I was raised by a fuckboy, if you want to keep it real. My brothers get so mad when I say that, but it's true. It's true. I got aunts and, you know, people in my family that I love that have had relationships with various type of men, and like the definition of a fuckboy is to be careless with a woman's mental, physical, spiritual, or financial safety, either by negligence or on purpose. Yeah, because you know, you can get a little academic. You got to define it for these motherfuckers. But yeah, that's why I started, because it's like a driving force for women to like want a partner, to want to be chosen by a man, to want to be loved by a man, by men especially. And I'm like, that's fine, but let's make sure that we have these tools to recognize it before we're so in love, before we're so caught up that we can't undo this. And also so we can make better choices, because it's like, in terms of choosing up in pimp culture, it's like, you do, unless somebody is guerrilla forcing you into a relationship, you are choosing this fuckboy. And let's also be honest, if that's your type, if you like a little bit of danger, you know?
Yeah,
if you like a little bit of toxicity.
Or it's like self-sabotage,
Yeah,
you know,
also
dating
that.
style. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like for me, when I started to heal my inner child and started to understand some of like my behaviors and where they were coming, abandonment issues, like things like that, I started to realize, oh, okay, because I was like a broke digger. Like, you know, I was like, what? Like, why is this happening? And so then it's once, yeah. We should start a whole podcast about that. But then I started really researching. There's a lot of information out there. And one of the things I noticed is there's a lot of similarities. You know, a lot of people talk about the narcissism and what that is. It's not just like, oh, you're full of yourself, you look in the mirror all the time. But there's actually, it's like an actual psychological disorder. Yeah. And they're actually like characteristics. And because we're not psychologists, we can't actually diagnose people. But I've noticed there's certain characteristics of narcissists. And I notice it's very similar to pimps. Like, because there's a whole way that they go about things. Exactly. They put you on a pedestal to start off. And so it's love bombing at first. And so this is like, because we were talking last time and the guys were like, oh, there's the gorilla pimps, but then there's the nice pimps. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, right. So I feel like the narcissist could be possibly a Casanova type, where he starts off giving you a lot of glorifying you, everything, and then he starts kind of like slowly nitpicking, being what is it called, degrading. Yeah. And then like there's the discard, and then it's kind of like a cycle. So it's like a highs and lows, and it creates this dependency for someone. And so when I started to research these things, I can see it real quick now. Like when I'm dating, and I'll just be like, no. Like, I'll literally be like, sorry, it's not going to work out. Because, like, I just don't have time.
And
like,
that's what I want. I want women especially to identify early on, because it's taking years off of us. You know, they're not talking about...
Talk about it.
They're not talking about the health effects or the woman you were talking about that got murdered by her boyfriend.
Yeah, femicide.
You know, they're not talking about that. They're just talking about kind of like heartbreak. And heartbreak does take time and hopefully therapy to get over. But it's actually like endangering to us. And so I want us to have more tools, and I want us to feel empowered to choose. And I think we always feel like men have to choose. They do got to choose back. The choosing do got to be mutual.
It does.
But it doesn't mean that we have no power, in the matter. And so I have like a curriculum about it, and I ask people to talk about their love languages. Shout out to, I think the guy's name is Gary. But it's also like your love narrative. And how you were raised kind of defines your love narrative. And so I saw my mom be loved a very particular way, saw my father be loved a very particular way. And I had to, some of the love narratives might be healthy and you might want to keep. And then there's other shit that we have to unlearn. Like my mom loved without quitting, without ceasing, even if the love was toxic.
Ride or die.
Ride or die. I hate that motherfucking term. I'm not.
Because you will die. Right. Eventually. You will.
Hello. Hello.
It should be ride and die.
Right. It's like we want to talk about.
Yeah, we could take a moment for that.
Right. Moment of silence.
Real shit.
Right.
Real shit.
That's a
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Too, because I think that, especially in the Bay Area, we have a lot of, part of the culture here is that we have a lot of influx of like information, and we get exposed to a lot of like, people who know what they're talking about or have read a lot of books or so on and so forth, and perform a certain level of I'm healed or I'm enlightened or I'm educated.
It's all
so, right. But we also have that too when it comes to healing. And a lot of us, we have these words like we talk about, I heard you say tools. Now I know you, and I know you actually been using your tools. You got a whole tool kit. Yeah. But I don't think that we talk enough about like, what are those tools? How long does it take, to heal something? Is it, I go to therapy once and then I'm cool?
No, it's sliding scale, and it should be a lifetime practice.
Thank you. Yeah. So my question is, talk about some tools that you've used or that you're still using. And I want to hear both you and Zen, like what's in your toolkit? What you using? And in addition, your partners, what's in your partner's toolkit, or who are the men in your life who you're like, oh, your toolkit is packed and you using that shit. Right. What are those tools so folks can know, like?
And not just your hammer, sir.
Yeah.
Why did they think that dudes everything? I feel real sad about the dudes with the bad peen because they don't got no tools.
Right. Well,
them be the ones that act right. They know. Compensate some other way.
Okay. Let's talk about tools. Let's talk about tools. And
one of the biggest toolkits is self-accountability. And so I came up with like a red flags list in relationships, right? Like a man who's always talking negative about his ex-girlfriends, his mama, okay, that's a red flag. You date a man that got kids and you barely seen the kids, you barely hear about the kids, that's a red flag, okay? So I have a list of red flags. And so I was talking to my husband about the curriculum, and he was like, yeah, but why do women ignore the red flags? You should write that list too. And so I started fleshing out the list. I took it to Facebook. Women added to it to me. There's research up in here. Yeah.
Let's go.
And so the D is a reason we ignore the red flags. Time, like I'm getting older and I want a relationship and I want a baby, and also people are pressing me like, where your man at? Where your kid at? Where your husband at? So time, I've been a ride or die, and I invested a lot of energy, a lot of money into this man. Matter of fact, I glowed him up. I put him up on game. So why would I want to walk away from my investment? Right. Also, the love bombing. Like, there's no one who's loved me this deeply, this intensely. We've been through so much together.
That's the D.
That's the D. That's really the D.
Love me this
Been dignitized.
Dickmatized, girl.
Yeah, dickmatized. The D. The D's at the top of the list. But there's science behind the D. It's raining D, but it's not raining good D.
The price of D has gone down.
The price of D is the stocks in D has gone down.
Stock in D is
Yeah. Because it's like if women are in their 30s and they can't say that they're orgasming sometimes with you, that stock is low, bruh.
Right.
But then, I mean, and maybe this is a separate question to address later, but that kind of brings us back to the pimp culture and the kind of like psychology, mind tricks, manipulation aspect. Because sometimes people could build up and you might think it's the D, but really it's all the manipulation that's happening around.
Highs and lows of addiction.
Right. But I still want to hear more about the toolkit because there's a lot of folks who saying, well, I'm healing myself. Or even brothers, ancestors, people of all gender expressions. Well, I'm healing myself. Well, how are you doing that? Well, I sat by myself and thought a lot, which is good that you're reflecting, but folks need tools.
But that is a part of your toolkit. Like, I feel like for me, I got better at dating when I stopped waiting on a man to show up for me to live my life, when I really got comfortable with my own company, when I really became okay with being alone. Because when you're not pressed about something, you make different choices. Right. Yes. If you're pressed about being somebody's wife, if you're pressed about having somebody's baby, you're going to act like that. It's like going to the grocery store hungry. That's right. You in there, I'm about to crack open these cashews and eat them before I even get to the register. Like, don't be going into it like spiritually hungry. You do like the healing is a constant process, but also like I always say self-discipline is self-love. Yeah. Some of that is like disciplining the way that you even allow people to show up in your life, the way that you allow people to treat you, setting boundaries, like all of that is so important because if you don't have an understanding of like, first of all, if you don't have a love for like just yourself by yourself, you are going to go and you're going to go into dating hungry. Yeah. And so you can be out here, I think he's starting to look good. I think he's starting to look good, which is going to naturally,
this taste like?
Which is going to naturally happen. But I always tell, like, whenever I'm talking to like young girls or young women, I'll be like, what does your gut say? Because I'm going to tell y'all right now, when I go back, hindsight's 20/20, but when I go back and really think about like dating, every guy I ever dated that actually like was a good guy, I knew it in my spirit in the same way that I knew the ones that weren't good. Even the ones that were manipulating the hell out of me or hiding it, I had a feeling that something was off. Even that idea that something is off, you need to press that. And a lot of times we don't want to ask the right questions. Because if you ask that man enough questions, he I don't care how smart he is, he gonna eventually fold.
That's true. Where the red flag list comes in. That is true. You already ignored your intuition and you're like, let me see. Yeah. Maybe I'm just tripping. Right. But red flag after red flag, you kept ignoring like the red flags.
It's true. But I want to say, back to your eating analogy or your food analogy, when you don't know, when you've been hungry for so long, right? And you don't know the difference between starvation and hunger, or you haven't developed your palate. You haven't developed your palate. You don't even know you're hungry anymore. You don't even know what it's like to be satiated. You know what I'm saying? Then you continue to make horrible decisions. Yeah. You said something also that was key too, Zen, about self-discipline, right? I believe discernment comes with the self-discipline. And we can't always tell people, you got to have discernment. It's like, well, how do I acquire that if I've been so off the mark for so long? I don't know what my inner person is saying to me. I don't even know what intuition feels like, right? That little voice that's ringing up might be ringing up all the time, or it might be muted because so many other things are screaming and blaring at this moment. And so I do believe the thing that we all have a handle on, and this is a married ass woman talking to you right now, the thing that we all have a handle on is discipline. And it's, when you're out of pocket, and it might be something that has nothing to do with your dating life that you have to practice the discipline in. It might be, you know what, I'm gonna slide this phone to the side. I'm not about to get on IG for a second. Or, you know what, I'm not gonna order that particular carb today, or you know what, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna make it my duty to drink this many ounces of water a day or whatever. Once you get into the practice of discipline, then you can get into understanding where your body is speaking, where your spirit is speaking. You know the difference between, you know what, that's my flesh talking, that's me being horny right now, that's me being sad and tired right now, that's me needing affection, and really this is actually my spirit and my intuition. But you can't, that discernment comes with discipline.
Yeah.
But a fuckboy and a pimp, you gotta know the tools in their toolkit. They got toxic tools. Okay?
Oh, for sure.
And they're audacious. They're persistent. Okay, it's like phone call, text 1. You was like, ignore, discipline. All right. Phone call, text 2. Ignore, discipline. Phone call, text 3. You know, maybe you let him come over. Maybe you went over. And the thing is, I definitely think that there has to be some level of like empathy and like forgiving yourself when you fuck up. It doesn't mean that you got to spiral and like you got to let him all the way back in.
Right.
If you got to reset that boundary, like reset that boundary. If you got to do a detox, I like recommend an F-boy detox. I recommend going cold turkey on whoever the person was.
Block them.
And the thing is, I just want to say, yes, block them, but we got to realize people exist in real life, right?
Yes.
So now you're not going to the shindig because you know he's going to be there.
Right.
I suggest doing that in the beginning, but then you got to live your life. You can't have this man scaring you because he about to be at the function or at the event.
You can't be nowhere.
You know, but I suggest replacing that energy with something else that feels good to you, that you're passionate about. Like if you haven't put time into your hobbies, if you haven't put time into your self-care, we got a lot of self-care queens out here. It's kind of like muddying it a little bit for me, but you have to replace your time with something. You have to make yourself busy for a little bit, you know, so you won't fall into like a lapse back. And then I also tell people in terms of just, I don't know if to call it a tool, but it's something to keep in mind that, sorry, my voice is hella soft and I'm far away, that closure is a trap. What do we need closure for? Unless we're on the brink of divorce or unless you're somebody we're like thinking about marriage or continue a long-term relationship, then maybe we need therapy. But if I've confirmed that you're toxic for me, what's the closure for?
Right.
The closure just gonna get you fucked again.
He gonna close that door is what's gonna happen, and you gonna be on the other side of it with him. So
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's very. So my next question is too, like, I'll just be honest, okay? So I'm gonna give you the real stories of my own life. There's been times when I felt like, okay, so kind of what like Ryan is talking about, where I've started to build up my self-discipline, which I feel that my intuition kind of was muddied because of trauma as well, because PTSD does have that effect on you. Yeah. But also I started to be like, okay, like how, like, do you feel like women can be pimps too? And do you feel like the idea of like becoming the pimp, is that a strategy? I see sometimes it happens, right, within hip hop as well. We see a lot more women rappers, a lot of different types of women rappers than when I was coming up, for example. There's just a plethora, right? Some of them are about this, some of them are about that. But sometimes, you know, they might call themselves, like Megan sometimes calls herself a pimp, you know? And so, like, do you think that that's possible? Do you think that that's a strategy that women can use? Like for me, it's like if I am a recovering broke digger, then that is the opposite to be like, he got to have money. He got to cash me out. He got to, you know, because like, especially in the Bay where it's like guys have grown up in a culture in which they were discouraged from paying for anything.
Discouraged is putting it lightly.
You know what I mean? So how do we navigate that? Like, have you ever thought about being the fuck girl, being the pimp? Like,
I was traditionally a fuck girl. So I just wanted to say, I say that I was traditionally a fuck girl. I entered marriage with some fuck girl ideologies, and I definitely took the power seat and was like a fuck girl. Like, if we about to get down, I'm about to be like, what's up? I'm choosing. And so like even in my relationship, sometimes I'm too stingy with the cooch because being a girl child that was molested, I have like this masterful control over my vagina, you know? And I have to learn that in a safe place, it should be mutual between a safe partner, right? They can initiate, I can initiate. But, you know, being younger, I have a chapter called Are You a Fuck Girl, though? And it's like, if you going out with, you know, dudes for meals, that's some fuck girl shit. If you...
Is it? Please explain.
Please explain.
Because there's a lot of places where women would be like, no, it's not.
Yeah, especially on the East Coast. Yeah. But here's the thing. I am believing in liking the, like, let's go back to, like, dating. Like, yeah, you can treat me on a date, you know? You could be a woman that wants to engage with men that way in which you expect them to pay for dates. that's cool. You can be a woman that engages with men and you expect, you know, that to happen sometimes. Sometimes you cover, sometimes y'all go Dutch, whatever. But more so, if you're only going for the date, for the meal, then you're using a man, period.
And the vacation.
And the vacation.
Okay.
And the thing is like, I'm using you for a vacation. It's like, who's going good and flued out and not fucking? So you got to know when you get too much into your fuck girl bag, you got to know that shit and expectations come with your fuck girl bag, you know? And then also if you get, it's like, if we hang out, Maddie, and I know that I just want to use you for something. You know what I'm saying? Versus like, I'm curious and I'm interested in getting to know you and you pay for the meal or you take me out. Right. That's mutual. And so I think in defense of being used by men, we become fuck girls. So it's a defense mechanism. I don't think fuck girls are made without fuck boys.
That's right.
Period.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So like,
because sometimes it's put at the same level, and it's like it's a meal, bruh. Like,
it's a meal.
How
but
dare you go on dates just for the food because you were hungry? It's like it's not.
It's like you can eat rice and beans.
No, but I feel you though. Yeah.
And it's like if we are saying that we want good men, right? Then we also have to, in the mix, not send mixed signals and be trash to men who we wanted to start. Oh, he not attractive enough. He don't make enough money. He not tall enough. He not dark skinned enough.
Small.
His dick is small. He ain't got dreads. Whatever he ain't got, right? Because you know, we be having our times.
He ain't got dreads.
He ain't got dreads.
No. Girl.
And I also...
But it'd be like, you know, we will friend zone, we will brother zone, we will.
I don't feel the friend zone exists. I
I
believe the friend zone is a make believe thing because. What does that even mean? Like, if you want to be friends with somebody, you just want to be friends with somebody. You know what I mean?
So, to me, friend zoning is you know that he wants to be more than friends.
Right.
So you gonna ride the wave. Sure, we can go out.
Yeah.
Sure, we can do this together. You know he has intentions of more than friendship, unless you have made it clear. Like, I understand that you like me, but I really respect our friendship, and I just want to keep it as a friend.
But if he's also choosing to be there, you know what I mean? He's there too. So he's there because the flip of that could be, have you ever been friends with a guy and you really, like, you genuinely thought you were friends, but the whole time he really has been waiting to fuck you?
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, like, you know, so it's like, I just don't personally believe the friend zone.
Well, let me
exists.
ask you a
figment of our
question, though.
imagination.
If it is truly friendship, are you getting anything from that man, right? So if he feels friend zoned, is it because he's paid for things? He's insisted on paying for things, even if he insists. Or he has provided a level of emotional support for you that would otherwise be reserved for a man that you're sleeping with.
I don't know, maybe because I'm just direct. I would never be in that situation because it's like, if we're gonna, like, are people just not having conversations? Because it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, like, I mean, at a certain point, we're gonna have a conversation about something because we're gonna be like, yeah.
People are not.
But people don't.
People are not having conversations, and then the subtext is like, well, if I told him and he's letting me use him, then that's him. It goes both ways. If a man told you, hey, you know, I'm just dating women, you know, I have other women or whatever, and I'm not, you know, looking for a relationship, but you still give him relationship shit, you know.
So women can get friend zoned.
Yeah, women get friend zoned.
Yeah, women get friend zoned.
Often we don't ever say women get friend zoned.
It definitely goes. Women get more so fuck buddy zoned than friend zoned.
Yeah, because men will still have sex with you.
Right.
Yes, they will. Women don't have sex with men that they just want to friend zone.
Right.
Men will not want to be with you and will still sleep with you. So that's how it's different.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say something back to what you were talking about. I think for me the issue or the part that makes me uncomfortable is the using part.
Yeah.
And granted, like, I have a younger brother. I love him to death. So I'm always thinking of it from the standpoint of like, I don't want to do something to a man that I'd be pissed off if somebody did that to my little brother. Yeah, right. So like when I'm thinking about fairness and ethics, like I don't want a meal from you if I don't genuinely like you, unless we already know like we're friends and that's already been established and you're like, we're going out and I'm just going to pay because that's how I am as a man. But like, I actually don't like the work of turning people down that I don't really like. Like I would rather just buy my own meal than to have to sit there like this with you. After, you know, when you just want a man to leave you alone. Yesterday, this man help me after I finish. Oh my! No, I'm gonna just make my food at home. Also, I'm somebody that loves to travel. I pay for my vacations. I'm not letting a man pay for my vacation if I know that I'm not romantically interested in him. Now, granted, I don't think they should automatically assume that I'm gonna sleep with them because I come. But if I don't even want to kiss you or lay next to you or take a picture with you, why am I letting you spend $1,000, $2,000 on a vacation? I just feel unethical.
Like culture, if he's spending that much, he's expecting some coochie, and that's not just pimp culture. That's just kind of like men and women one-on-one.
That's what I was gonna ask.
We can't deny that this is the paradigm between like sexual human beings that have expectations. So even if some of the expectations are flawed, we can't deny what the expectations.
But I would feel that way if I was a woman and I flew a man out for his birthday or something, and he get there and he like, I don't really want to take it. I don't like you. Like, go, you're going back home. You're going back home. I have expectations too on this vacation.
Okay. Oh my God. No, this is good. This is good. And I'm glad that you're being honest. Yeah. I'm glad that you're being honest. I want to ask, what do y'all see like, do y'all see this relationship as, how do I say it? Okay, so earlier we're talking about sexual trafficking, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about sexual trafficking of young girls. And then we were talking about a differentiation of sex work, which more comes out of, seems like folks who have privilege to kind of come in and come out, right? Or to even have the resources and the emotional resources of not having certain type of vulnerabilities or traumas where they can actually choose, right? And have agency, right?
Yeah.
But what's the relationship then when we're talking about like dating, marriage, any of those things between these transactions, right? Mm-hmm. Why is it that a man should pay and a woman shouldn't, right? Or so on and so forth. Where do all of us fall on that? Or is it a spectrum? Is it different? You know what I'm saying?
Can you ask a specific question again?
For example, so you'll answer. Okay. Well, one question is like, what's the difference between, and Maddie, we were having a conversation about marriage, right? The other day. So we need to get it back.
To remind you? Okay.
No, I remember what that is. But the question is there a difference between marriage when we know about, the history of marriage, the institution of marriage and how it came to be, and sex work? Or what is the difference between marriage, sex work, sex trafficking, pimping, dating? Yeah. What's the difference? Is there a difference?
Come on,
so, did you say you want to answer?
Oh, go for it.
Okay, so I definitely think that we do need to acknowledge the reality that, like you were saying, when people are in situations where, they may be more at risk or more in need of things, that, women also, especially back in the day, especially back before there were like more women's rights in place, women definitely married because they needed to survive. Especially if you were living in a poor household or you had a bad relationship with your daddy or something crazy was going on there. Women were getting married or girls were getting 15, 16, 17, 8, or as soon as they turned 18 so that there could be a man to take care of them. I think there are still places, even in our own country, where that exists. Like, whether we want to talk about it or not, it may not look the same. It may not be like you can't, like there's no job, nobody that's going to hire you or anything. But if you've always lived in poverty and there just aren't a lot of options available to you, and maybe you don't have a lot of education, you may feel like you do need to marry the guy over here that's working in the shipyard or the welding or whatever, because he's going to provide you with a better life. So I think that there is a reality to that, and that women in those situations definitely do date different.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I do agree. I believe that there are relationships to this day. I think, we always talk about, everybody romanticizes grandma's relationship, Big Mama and Pawpaw, they just stayed together. Yeah. When I say everybody, I mean that extremely loosely. But, the fact of the matter is many of them married under duress or, under financial circumstances or whatever, where they wouldn't have otherwise done so if there was more freedom, right? Or if there was more equity in society between men and women. I think today there's a lot more freedom for some folks, and it's not to say that there is parity yet, but there is a lot more freedom for women to choose how, when, if they want to be married, right? Yeah. And what the contract of that relationship looks like. People oftentimes ask my husband and I, well, they ask my husband, well, you're at home and you're with the kids. And well, when
you
she's
with your kids?
Right. Hold on. Right. Are you babysitting? Like,
oh God,
that ridiculousness. Yeah. Right. Wow. Or are surprised when I'm under the sink. Or, you know what I mean? Or surprised when he's cooking the dinner or vice versa or whatever, because there are all these mores, ideas about the way marriage should be based on old standards that have nothing to do with the reality of life now. And again, marriage is a contract. It is. It's an institution. And as our institutions change in this country and in this society, so does that marriage contract, right? And so there is a requirement, certainly in California, in this very expensive Bay Area, for myself and my husband to be working. Period. Right? For us to afford the lifestyle that we need. And so that means that the way that our marriage is set up is entirely different. And frankly, because I was raised in a society and in a time and really in a household where there was equal distribution of labor, where there was equal expectations, that also trickled down, like you were saying, Tiara, into my relationship and how I govern my relationship and how we share. And that is also sexual. You know what I mean? Like, not to give up all the tea husband, but, as you were saying, when he wants, he can initiate. When I want, I can initiate. That there is an expectation on both sides for yielding. There is an expectation on both sides for obedience, as it says in the Bible, so on and so forth. That there is an expectation for help also, as we talk about the Bible. They talk about a helpmate, so on and so forth. And that has been relegated for women based on social mores. But the reality is marriage is a contract between two consenting human beings, adult human beings, and how that breaks down gender orientation, so on. That's none of anybody's business but the two people who are in that relationship.
Right. And from a single person's perspective, it's interesting because I think when I was growing up, one of the things that left me vulnerable to fuckboys was this idea, what's a beautiful girl like you doing all alone? And I just remember from middle school that happened. And I also, as a queer woman, I'm bisexual. And I remember I was so afraid that people would know that I like girls. And I remember this guy had a crush on me in middle school and he was like, I don't know if she's a fruitcake. And I was like, oh, I got to have a boyfriend because I don't want anybody to know. And so it was just interesting. And as I've been single more and more, I'm starting to realize it's kind of a movement in a way, because a Psychology Today article recently came out that everybody was talking about, in which studies are showing that men are actually single and alone right now, because you can also see that men, they might have lonely and they're alone because of the fact that they don't have very genuine relationships with other men. Like, I have my homegirls, like I have a beautiful, like, even though like I don't have a partner right now, I have women that I can talk to. I have my, my nieces, nephews, and so, and men just aren't talking. They're not having these emotionally intelligent conversations that are needed. And I think that what's happening is, they're starting men are starting these podcasts. They're going down these, incel rabbit holes. They're lonely. They're sad. And it's like, rabbit hole. Bruh, like y'all the ones that end up alone because you don't want to work on these issues. And so, yeah, I just think it's really interesting from both sides of the spectrum of conversation. Because to be honest, in a lot of relationships, I felt like it was a prison. And so I've had to really just be on my own. And like, this is dope. Like, it's actually one of my best times in my whole entire life. And it's almost healing generations of women that I know were trapped, literally trapped in their relationships. And so, yeah, it's interesting depending on where women are in their relationship statuses and the way that we're navigating in different ways. And I do want to make sure that we have a second to close it up, but it has been a truly, truly incredible conversation. I don't want to thank you both for being here. So I was wondering if we could just close out with just one word. We're going to do the one word thing, So one word that you feel like would describe the opposite of pimp culture. So because a lot of time we're reacting to messed up things, right? But if we could imagine something that was the opposite or something that might already exist within your relationships, right? What would that word be?
Healthy.
I like that. Yeah. I would say intimacy. Intimacy.
words, but it would be divine masculinity and divine femininity. It would be divine masculinity and divine femininity culture, because if it's toxic, then it has a scale. There's a divine level to it too. So yeah.
I would just say solidarity, camaraderie, yeah. Cooperation. Good dick.
These niggas don't be cooperating.
And good dick.
And good dick.
Or a good poom poom.
Like you could be a grown man and not know that your dick is whack because women ain't even telling you. That's another podcast.
That's the next conversation.
Stop faking orgasms, ladies, please.
Stop telling him it's good if it's not good. You know?
When he asks questions, answer them honestly.
Yes. You can give feedback. Like, no, not like this, like that. Okay, but that's part 2. Ryan?
I mean, it's all wrapped up in the same word. I think equity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us on What's Pimpin', a Still I Rise podcast.
Thank you.
So bomb. This is Tiara Fallon from Depth to Fuck Boys signing out.
Yes.